Okay, let's get straight down to business. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about. So you can see the tweet on screen here. Frank Warren has revealed that Moses Itauma is now targeting Joseph Parker for his next fight. And there's the quote directly where it says, that's what he was talking about. And he said, I really fancy that fight. Okay. Now, obviously, a lot of people are saying, what's in it for Joseph Parker? Why would he fight Moses Itauma? Well, if we have a look at the heavyweight rankings here, and by the way, I'm not saying that Joseph Parker necessarily will be interested, but he might be, for reasons I'm about to explain here. So if we have a look at the heavyweight rankings, Joseph Parker is currently WBO interim champion. But here's the problem for Joseph Parker. None of the top contenders right now are interested in fighting him. So you've got Martin Bakole talking about fighting Jelly Zhang. Zhang apparently was, according to Frank Warren, gonna look to fight Joseph Parker in a rematch, but there's no public demand for it, or very little public demand. So none of these top contenders want to fight Joseph Parker because there's not a lot of money in it, and there's not enough fan demand to push those fights ahead. So Parker's kind of in no man's land at the moment. And also, is Joseph Parker really going to pursue a title shot? Because we all know that he's very close to Tyson Fury, right? As somebody who's close to Tyson Fury, presumably he thinks Fury is going to win the rematch with Usyk. And therefore, is Joseph Parker really planning to become heavyweight champion? Over the past few years, he hasn't seemed that interested in pursuing a heavyweight title shot. He's kind of resigned himself to just being a prize fighter in the truest sense of the word. Kind of like Derek Chisora. Just a guy who goes out there and tries to find paydays. In tough fights, don't get it twisted. Joseph Parker's coming off 2 good wins. But how ambitious is he to become heavyweight champion? That's the thing. Now, what happens in the Usyk-Fury rematch, if it goes ahead, may influence Joseph Parker to either pursue a title shot or not. Again, he's interim champion right now. If Tyson Fury were to win it, is he going to vacate the WBO belt? Maybe he would. We will see. Tyson Fury had previously said that if he were to beat Alexander Usyk, he would vacate all the belts other than the WBC belt. It remains to be seen whether he would stick to that promise if he were to win that rematch. With Alexander Usyk, we don't know what would happen if he beats Tyson Fury again, which belt he'll keep hold of. So it's all up in the air. But as I say, Joseph Parker hasn't seemed that keen on pursuing a heavyweight title shot in the past. It seems to him more about getting big fights for big money rather than specifically about a title shot. And then you've got to think of the fact that Joseph Parker may have seen Moses Itauma up close. Yeah, and I suspect this is why Moses Itauma wants to fight, because Itauma was Tyson Fury's sparring partner for the Usyk fight. So he's been in that Fury camp. Was he there with Joseph Parker? Did he spar Joseph Parker? If so, did he get the better of Joseph Parker? Is that why he's looking to fight him? I can't answer these questions. Maybe some of you guys have got some info on that. But maybe Parker looked at Moses Itauma and thought, this guy's the future of the heavyweight division. This guy's the future. And maybe he's thinking, if I can get him now while he's green, get a win over him, that's going to look good on my CV in years to come. Because if I wait, let's say 2-3 years to fight Moses Itauma, I might not be good enough then to beat him. I might be a bit too old and he might be a bit too experienced then. He might have enough experience. Whereas if I get him now, when he's still green, when he's still wet behind the ears, it could look, as I say, good on my CV in years to come. So maybe Joseph Parker will be tempted by that if Frank Warren puts up enough money. And it is all about the money at the end of the day. Also, Itauma would have to be willing to take a tiny percentage compared to what Parker is going to be getting paid for that fight. Yeah? Itauma will have to take the short end of the stick as far as the purse in order to get the opportunity, because Joseph Parker is the interim champion. He is the guy that's won big fights, that's fought on the biggest stage. So again, all depends on Itauma as well. Now, personally, if I was a member of Itauma's team, this is not a fight that I particularly like for him, because Joseph Parker is quick, he's a mover, he's experienced, and he might be able to old man Moses Itauma in there. I'm not saying that he necessarily would. I'm saying he might be able to old man him. I think somebody like a Joe Joyce would be a better style matchup for Moses Itauma. You know, a big, slow, clunky heavyweight who actually beat Joseph Parker? Yeah, somebody like that, I think, would fit better into Moses Itauma's plans in the ring, right? His fight style. It would be a better style matchup for him. So, but, you know, in a situation like this, if Moses Itauma wants to break Mike Tyson's record, the deadline is May next year. So he's going to have to take a gamble. He's going to have to take a risk if he wants to try and achieve that goal. And by the way, it's not the only reason he turned pro at 18, to try and break Mike Tyson's record. Is one of the reasons. The other reason, basically, he said, is financial, because he doesn't come from a well-to-do family and he wants to help his family out. That's one of the reasons he turned pro so early. But the other is to try and break Mike Tyson's record, and he's serious about it. And so, you know, if you want to try and achieve something like that, you got to take big risks. Now, there were some Mike Tyson fans who turned up in the comment section of one of my recent videos to criticize the things I was saying regarding if Itauma were to beat Mike Tyson's record. I said they should then vacate the belt. And they said, oh, that's not fair. Well, he doesn't deserve to break Mike Tyson. This is fanboy talk. It's not about who deserves what. Yeah? It's about who can do what. Some of them were saying, why do you hate Mike Tyson? I don't hate Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is one of my favorite ever fighters. What's not to like about Mike Tyson in the ring? Explosive, fast, knocks people out, hyper aggressive, always goes for the KO. What's not to like? Yeah, again, this is fanboy talk coming from these people. I don't hate Mike Tyson. You know, I could just as easily flip it and say, why do you hate Moses Itauma? Why do you not want him to break Mike Tyson's record? Why are you saying he's not worthy? You sound like a fanboy. I don't care whether it's Moses Itauma or any other young heavyweight prodigy who I think has the ability, the potential ability to break the record. I just want to see the record broken, because I like to see all records broken. I don't want to see records last forever. How many of you do not want to see Usain Bolt's record broken? You don't want to see it? I want to see Usain Bolt's record broken. I want to see people jump higher, run faster, and so on. Same thing with boxing. Yeah, I want to see somebody break Mike Tyson's record. We got a spammer in the chat, been dealt with. So yeah, all this fanboy talk from the Mike Tyson fanboys, calm it down. I just want to see something that we haven't seen before. And as far as not deserving to break Mike Tyson's record, you know, if he gets the title and then gives it up, Mike Tyson had damn near 30 fights within his first 2 years as a pro. Moses Itauma would have loved to have had that many fights. He would have loved to have had that type of experience. But in this day and age, with the current boxing landscape, it's not possible for Moses Itauma to have the number of fights that Mike Tyson had to be able to develop that quickly. Yeah, the number of fights are just not there for him. That's not his fault. Yeah, if he could have done, he would have had as many fights as Mike Tyson in his first 2 years. You see? So I would be perfectly okay with Moses Itauma winning a version of the world title and then vacating it to continue his learning process. Why not? Yeah, he hasn't had as I say, it was like 25 fights or something Mike Tyson had by the time he fought Berbick. Itauma hasn't had that many. So fair is fair. Yeah? And the people who don't want to see him break the record, they're people that are Mike Tyson fanboys. That's just what it is. So that's my take on it. I'm not saying that this fight with Joseph Parker will happen, but it wouldn't shock me. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Parker says, you know what? If Frank Warren's willing to put the money up, maybe if the Saudis get involved and whatever, it will look good on my resume in years to come because this guy may well be the future. Let me get him now when he's still green. Let me get him at the right time. So that's my take on it. Let's have a look at some comments here. Just gonna pop out the chat. Let's have a look here. Shout out to everybody in the chat room, by the way, for locking in. We got Marley Miles in here, big up. Records are made to be broken. Damn straight. How boring would sport be if world records were never broken? Imagine how boring it would be. So if you want to see, explain to me, those of you who are desperate for Mike Tyson's record to remain intact forever, explain to me why you're happy to see world records broken in sprinting, track and field, in, motor racing, whatever. You're cool with those records being broken. But when it comes to boxing, when it comes to Mike Tyson's record in particular, you're terrified of that one being broken because you're a fanboy. It's just that simple. I'm not a Moses Itauma fanboy. I just look at a talented fighter and I'm excited to see how far they can go with their talent, what they can achieve with it. So this is the first time in a long time, as I said, the first time I made a video about Itauma, we haven't had a prospect like this come along who's so advanced at this age in the heavyweight division for years and years and years. I know there was some talk about Hughie Fury when he turned pro at 18 and Daniel Dubois when he turned pro at 18, that they might potentially break Mike Tyson's record. But you never heard me say that, did you? You never heard me banging the drum saying when Hughie Fury was 18. I was right here on YouTube when Hughie Fury turned pro at 18. I was right here on YouTube when Daniel Dubois turned pro at 18. But you never heard me banging the drum for them about beating Mike Tyson's record. No, because to me, they didn't look anywhere near advanced enough for it to be realistic at the age of 18. They both looked kind of novice-y. Whereas Itauma, even before he was 18, in his amateur fights, at 16 and 17, he was advanced. So I thought, okay, this guy has got the potential to maybe do it. And that's why I started banging the drum about it. Sweet Science says Mike Tyson is an icon with or without the record of youngest champ. Okay, but what does that have to do with his record being broken? Shout out to Matt for the super chat. Says he can see Hearn going into politics after boxing. I guess he talked about being MP for the particular part of Essex that he lives. And he seemed semi-serious about maybe doing that one day. We'll see. He certainly got the gift of the gab for it. I think Tyson Fury should go into politics as well, to be honest. He's such a good liar, Well, when I say he's a good liar, most people can see through his lies now, but he lies so effortlessly. It's such second nature to Tyson Fury to lie that he might as well go into politics with Eddie Hearn running against him. In separate political parties, Hearn versus Tyson Fury for some seat somewhere. The Zombie Dome says, was a young Huey Fury really talked about as a potential Tyson Fury record breaker? Well, think about it, right? He was, but think about it. Mick Hennessy, after the Joseph Parker fight, came out and said that Huey Fury was shades of Muhammad Ali. Shades of Ali. So man was comparing him to Muhammad Ali. Best believe they didn't compare him to Mike Tyson, but they said, well, he might be able to break Mike Tyson's record because he turned pro at 18. But obviously his dad, Peter, kept saying he's a young guy, he's a young guy, he's a young guy. He hasn't got his man strength yet. Up until he was damn near 30, he was still talking about he hasn't got his man strength yet. But shout out to Peter Fury. I like Peter a lot. Okay, Fizz says Parker would probably dominate Moses. We'll see if the fight happens. Parker is very experienced. He's got quick hands himself. You know? It's a tricky fight. Okay, somebody says if Fury goes into politics, we're really in trouble. I don't think you'll be in any worse trouble than you are already, to be honest. I don't think Tyson Fury can make it any worse than it is. He would fit right in. Yeah, he would fit right in, but I don't know about it being any worse. It's bad enough. Big up Philip Answer. Ben Marshtown says, if Mike Tyson's record does get broken, he could still say he was heavyweight champion at 20. Andy Jackson, I completely agree. Keir Starlin. Ocean Blue says, if Parker beat Itauma, I think the win would age similarly to Floyd's win over Canelo. It may never be as good as that win, but it might age well, yeah. Because, of course, Canelo's achieved a hell of a lot. Cole says, Hatman, what do you think about Itauma's physique? Doesn't look very muscular. Does he need to be? I wasn't aware that you had to be really muscular to be successful in boxing. Who would I pick between Itauma and Parker right now? It's a tricky one. You know, it's a tricky one. I probably have to sit on the fence. I wouldn't at all be surprised if either guy won, truth be told. I think stylistically, that's one of the trickier matchups that could be made for Itauma to try and pick off, let's say, a low-hanging fruit by way of a belt. That's one of the trickier matchups. Yeah, he could go for Manuel Char, who's the regular champion, but he's going to want multi-millions. He'll probably want more than Joseph Parker wants, you know? And at least with Parker, they've got a name brand. When combined with Itauma's name, they could probably sell that fight quite well. But Itauma versus Manuel Char, and Char's only the regular champion. So many people would dispute Itauma's record, you know, breaking Mike Tyson's record if he only picks up a regular belt. Whereas with Joseph Parker, he'd be interim champion, and then maybe they could expedite, because this is another thing I forgot to mention. Frank Warren has a very close relationship with the WBO. Very close. The WBO owe a lot of their success and a lot of their legitimacy, you know, becoming recognized as a legitimate sanctioning body. They owe a lot of that to Frank Warren, because he was with them right from the beginning. He was having his fighters fight for the WBO belt when it was seen as a Mickey Mouse title. When it was seen the way the IBO, title is seen today. So Frank Warren definitely helped that organization a lot, and therefore he still has this very close and strong relationship with them, where his fighters are able to get WBO opportunities and so on. But really the turning point for the WBO, what really got them recognized as legitimate, wasn't Frank Warren. He helped them get off the ground. He helped them get on their feet. But it was really the Klitschko era. Vladimir Klitschko. He was the one that really legitimized the WBO. Yeah, because when Lennox Lewis became undisputed, beating Evander Holyfield, the WBO wasn't in the conversation. Yeah, it was around, people were fighting for it, but nobody really cared about it, nobody took it serious. But it was after Lewis retired during the Klitschko era, that's when the WBO started to be recognized universally. So Marley Marl says Parker would make it ugly. Yeah, he might make it ugly. One of the reasons I think Itauma would have a chance in the fight of winning, and look, if Joseph Parker were to beat Itauma, I would expect it to be on points. But if Itauma were to win, you look at, for example, the Jack Massey fight. Joseph Parker had plenty of problems against Jack Massey. He got hit plenty against Jack Massey. Now, obviously, the bigger a fight is, generally, the more motivated a fighter is going to be. So you can't necessarily take too much from the Jack Massey fight, but I don't think Parker would be that difficult for Itauma to hit, you know? And the Zhang fight aside, because Zhang is a very big target, he's nowhere near as mobile as Itauma. How effective is Joseph Parker really against southpaws? Yeah, he stunk the place out against Zheli Zhang. He won the fight, but Zhang's gas tank was gone by what, the halfway stage? So again, if you want to do great things in boxing, if you want to try to break that record, you're going to have to take a risk. And maybe Joseph Parker is the risk they're looking to take, since it's the WBO route. The Frank Warren's so close to the WBO. So there you go. Love Shack says, I want to see records broken, but not to then vacate. Why not? He's only had, 10 professional fights? As I said earlier on, he hasn't had the opportunity to have 25 fights in his first 2 years like Mike Tyson had. Mike Tyson was blessed to be in a position where he was able to get that many fights in such a short space of time. And of course, under the guidance of Cus D'Amato and the people that Cus had around him, like Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton and all the other people, he had a formula for getting a guy to the heavyweight title very, very quickly. He did it with Floyd Patterson, who was the youngest guy before Mike Tyson. That's not a coincidence. Cus D'Amato had a formula worked out. He had a network in place. He had connections with the television networks and what have you. So, and also, he was able to get Mike Tyson on so many different shows. Sometimes Mike Tyson would fight twice within a month or so in his first 2 years as a pro. Itauma would have loved to do that, but the boxing landscape doesn't allow for it nowadays. That's not his fault. Therefore, if he were to take a risk now, challenge for a heavyweight title, win it, in let's say his 11th or 12th or 13th fight, why not vacate? He never had the opportunity to get the kind of experience that Mike Tyson got in his first 2 years as a pro. It's perfectly fair as far as I'm concerned. Best Trapper Alive says, no, the 80s was pretty underrated. I don't think the 80s was underrated. I think the 80s, particularly the Mike Tyson 80s, which is the mid to late 80s, it was a weak era. It was a weak era. You look at the guys Mike Tyson fought. Trevor Berbick. He was a crude brawler. He got knocked out in one round early in his career. So it's not like Mike Tyson did something unprecedented when he beat Trevor Berbick. He'd been chinned early in his career in one round. Then he beat Bone Crusher Smith, who was no great shakes, right? Then he beat Pinkland Thomas, who was on Skag. Like, Pinkland Thomas had a heroin problem. Okay? And that's who Mike Tyson beat. The guy who was an addict. After Pinkland Thomas, he fought Tony Tucker. Tucker was a decent fighter. Tricky. But again, not any kind of all-time great or anything. He was a tricky fighter. And he had problems too with the nose candy. Why do you think Tony Tucker was so much in the wilderness after the Mike Tyson fight? Because he already had this thing with nose candy. He went missing for years because of drinking nose candy. So many of them guys in the 80s were strung out. Yeah? After that, Mike Tyson fought Tyrell Biggs. Tyrell Biggs was on crack cocaine. He had a crack habit. That's a fact. He was doing that from when he won the Olympic gold. That's why in only something like his 14th fight, the Duvers, who were his handlers at the time, they put him in with Mike Tyson. He was coming off a terrible performance against a guy called David Bay. Terrible performance where he got cut and he looked terrible. And that was his 14th or 15th fight. Then you're going to stick him in with Mike Tyson, who is something like 30-0. How does that make sense? Well, it makes sense when you realize that the guy was freebasing. Okay, he had a serious problem. And so the Duvers were like, you know what? We better put him in we better cash him out now because this guy is going nowhere fast because of his addiction. After Tyrell Biggs, he fought Larry Holmes, who came off the couch 2 years out the ring, didn't do any training. Don King, this story's been told. Larry Holmes told this story on stage right next to Mike Tyson. So if it was cap, if Larry Holmes was lying, Mike Tyson was right there to correct him. And Mike Tyson just clapped and laughed. Larry Holmes sat on the couch for 2 years, 38 years of age. Don King turned up at his door, offered him a suitcase full of money to fight Mike Tyson. At first he said, I can't fight Mike Tyson, I don't have enough time. And he'd tune up fights. Don King showed him the case of money. And Larry Holmes said, okay, when's the fight? And the fight was supposed to be something like 3 months out or 4 months out when Larry Holmes accepted it. And once he signed a contract to accept it, they then moved the fight date forward. Yeah, so Larry Holmes had less time to prepare. That's who Mike Tyson fought and beat, Larry Holmes. Yes, Holmes went on to fight and, have a good win over Ray Mercer. He fought for many more years. But when he beat Ray Mercer, he'd had something like 7 or 8 fights leading up to that. So he was far more sharp and far more prepared because he wasn't just coming off the couch like he was when he fought Tyson. After Larry Holmes, who was it then? I think it was the Spinks fight, right? Was it a Spinks fight? Or was it Tony Tubbs? No, I think it was Tony Tubbs. So after the Holmes fight, I think it was Tubbs in Japan. Tubbs was a decent fighter, slick and good boxer and all that. Tricky. But again, not an all-time great. And he also had substance abuse problems. You know that, right? Tony Tubbs during his career was also on the powder. So, people say the 80s was underrated. I mean, there were some guys that had talent, but so many of them had problems like serious substance abuse problems. So many of them guys that Mike Tyson beat, and most of them had already been beaten by Larry Holmes when Holmes was in his prime. Yeah? They were looking like a sad story by the time Mike Tyson fought him. So then it was Tubbs, then it was Spinks. I mean, Spinks had those, wins over Larry Holmes and, came up from light heavyweight, did his thing. But once he beat Larry Holmes, he didn't want to fight any of the top contenders. He didn't want to fight Tony Tucker. Spinks was doing the whole Tyson Fury thing. Oh, I'm lineal champion. Running around calling himself lineal when he didn't have no belts, when he refused to take part in the HBO heavyweight tournament. They had a heavyweight tournament. That's how Mike Tyson became undisputed. He was part of a tournament. Yeah? Tony Tucker was in it. Michael Spinks refused to participate in the tournament. You know, the same way that Lucien Boutte refused to participate in the Super Six? Yeah? That's what Michael Spinks did with the HBO heavyweight tournament. He refused to participate, got stripped of his IBF belt, or vacated, I forget which, and, sat it out and started calling himself lineal. Went and fought Jerry Cooney, who was way past it at that point anyway. Chinned Cooney in whatever it was, 5 rounds. Yeah, that was Spinks. So Mike Tyson fought him, done him in a round. Then he fought Frank Bruno. Bruno again, decent fighter, but he's not an all-time great, is he? He's not. You don't think of Frank Bruno and think, wow, he would have just demolished everyone around today. After Bruno, who did he fight after Bruno? Carl the Truth Williams. Done him in a round. Another guy who Larry Holmes already beat years earlier. And then it was the Buster Douglas fight. And Buster Douglas, who'd lost to Tony Tucker, so on and so forth, went in there and done Mike Tyson in 10 rounds. So I don't know why. I completely disagree with this notion that the 80s was underrated. It was a really good era. No, it was weak. It was a weak era. Maybe if those guys who were around during Tyson's time were clean, and I'm not talking about PEDs, I'm talking about, recreational substances, the hard stuff, hard food. That's what we call it in South London, right? Where I'm from. We call it hard food. If those guys weren't on the hard food, then maybe it would have been a better era. But they were on the hard food. So, that is what that is. Punch quote says, I don't think Moses can beat Miller. I might agree with you. Because, styles make fights. As much as people like me repeat this saying over and over again, it still doesn't seem to stick in people's heads. They don't understand the rock, paper, scissors nature of boxing. That's what boxing is like. It's like rock, paper, scissors. So they see someone. All right, 1 second, people. I'll be back in a moment. All right, I'm back. So where was I? I was talking about Mike Tyson's career, right? When he lost to Buster Douglas and so on and so on. I've lost my train of thought. Maybe some of you guys can jog my memory where I was. But point is, yeah, the 80s, the mid to late 80s was a relatively weak era in heavyweight boxing because so many of those guys were strung out on all sorts of stuff. And it's not me making it up. Go look it up for yourselves. You don't believe me. you watch the entire HBO broadcast for Mike Tyson, Pinklon Thomas. Pinklon Thomas is right there in the build-up on the HBO broadcast talking about his issues with Skag. Imagine a heavyweight champion, because Pinklon Thomas was like WBA. Was he WBA champion? He was WBA champion. Was that no, I've got it wrong. No, Berbick was WBC. Bone Crusher Smith was WBA champion. Pinklon Thomas was a title defense for Mike Tyson. And then he fought the IBF champion and Tony Tucker to become undisputed. So he was a former champion fighting Mike Tyson. But imagine a former champion taking on whoever today. And in the run-up to the fight, they're talking about, oh yeah, for the past few years, I've been on Skag. I've been battling Skag addiction and alcohol addiction over the past few years. And that guy goes in the ring and fights whoever, Usyk or, whoever has a belt. Can you imagine the reaction of the fans? Like, what? You're fighting a guy as a skaghead. But that's what Mike Tyson did. And it's not that it was Mike Tyson's fault. It wasn't a cherry pick. It's just that during that era, there was so much of that going on. It was rampant. It was totally rampant. But you have to factor that in when you think about the Mike Tyson era. A lot of them guys had problems. Our best trap art alive says, Usyk best win is a guy who smokes cigarettes and drinks beer though. Well, there's a difference between doing that and doing Skag. A big difference. Big difference. A candy head, okay. But he also beat Anthony Joshua. He also beat Daniel Dubois. And they're consummate athletes. Anthony Joshua, what did he have? 10 title defenses? 9? Usyk beat him. Who did Mike Tyson beat that was coming off 10 title defenses? The only guy who Mike Tyson beat for a title during the 80s who didn't have substance abuse problems was Trevor Berbick. I'm not aware of Berbick having substance. Maybe he did as well, but I'm not aware of it. Yeah? But Berbick just wasn't very good. All right, the Zombie Dome official says Wilder can still get back into the mix. Nobody has knocked Joyce out cold. Wilder is capable, and it would be a good win. I'm going to check Matt's super chat here because I did go away. Thank you, Matt, for the super chat. Big up Matt every time. He says, the calm down after this generation of heavyweights retire is going to be rough. Other than Itauma, Jalalov, and Opataya, the next gen looks really weak. I can't disagree with you right now, Matt. Can't disagree with you right now. Because, as you say, Jalalov, he looks good. Itauma, Opataya, maybe if he moves up to heavyweight. But other than that, who is about? I mean, you got, obviously, Jared Anderson, but he needs to redeem himself. There's a lot of doubts about him, and understandably so, the way he got dealt with by Martin Bakole. So, yeah, it doesn't look like a particularly deep division the next era. Not like it is now. But obviously there's some bleed over. There's some crossover between the current era and the next era, because you do have guys like Hrgovic, Bakole, who are in their early 30s. Presumably, they're going to be around for at least, 4 or 5 more years fighting at world level. So they're going to be part of the new era. Even someone like Efe Ajagba. Martin Bakole will be a very interesting one. A very, very interesting one. Shout out to 1-1 for the super chat. Big up. Big up 1-1. Andre says Berbick had other issues. Well, Berbick is RIP. He got into a dispute over land with, I think it was his nephew. Chopped him in the head. Hit him in the head with a chopper. His nephew. Done his dance. So RIP Berbick. I mean, Berbick had some issues. He went to prison and yeah, he was accused of, maybe convicted of some really serious stuff. And back in Jamaica, and people say a lot of stuff about Berbick. Maybe it's true to say he wasn't a very nice guy, this, that, and the other. But in terms of his boxing career, I'm not aware of him having substance issues, at least prior to the Mike Tyson fight. Whereas with the others, they did. Actually, tell a lie. Bone Crusher Smith, I don't think did. But he just wasn't any great shakes, right? He wasn't a very good fighter. He was big, strong, relatively durable guy, but yeah, he was nothing special. Shout out to Simon Brandy for the super chat. He says, off topic, how glad are you that you left the UK? 2-tier stomach is a disgrace. If the unrest continues, do you think the Saudis may be less keen on boxing? I don't necessarily think it would affect the Saudi interest in boxing. But yeah, definitely got no love for, any politician really. I don't rate, I've very rarely ever seen a politician in any country that I had any time for. It's just some are even worse than others. And Stalin, Keir Stalin, happens to be one of the worst British ones that's come along for a while. Horrible. Simon Brandy, shout out for the super chat. He says, what's happened to Chris Andre? He's gone missing. Yeah, I think he tweeted a couple of months back to reassure everyone that he's still doing good. He's got some, personal stuff and whatever. He's busy living his life. But yeah, he did tweet a few months back, a few weeks ago, to just reassure everybody he is okay. He's doing his thing. A lot of people come and go in this YouTube thing. Over the years, there was a guy called, what was his name now? Boxing Gossip. He had a bit of a following back in the days, but he disappeared out the blue, never to be seen of again. There was a guy called Wingy, who was around for a long time. He disappeared after Tyan Booth said some stuff about him and his missus. So people come and go, but yeah, Chris Andre, big up Chris Andre. He was a great analyst of boxing, doing the technical breakdowns and all that for sure. Yeah, Cash, Magafuli was a G, R.I.P. Magafuli. One of the few real ones out there in the world of politics. Magafuli was a G. Afro Soul says the Rwandan prez is cool. I hear mixed things about him. I hear some very mixed things about him. You know, talk to Congolese people about the Rwandan prez. They got a very different story about him. All right, we're getting into, I probably shouldn't have brought up politics, right? I talk about that stuff on my Patreon page. I try to keep it off here, you know, for the sake of the algorithm. Shout out to Black Dynamite. He's educating some people there on the situation in Rwanda. Anyway, chaps, I'm going to end the stream here, and I'm going to continue later on my second channel. My live streaming channel. So shout out to everybody for locking in. One is responding to what the two-tier thing about Starmer. Yeah, I mean, I got no love for any of the politicians, man, at all. And what's going on in the UK right now is a classic old divide and rule, as far as I'm concerned. Pit different groups in society against each other so that they don't gang up and target you, the person who's really responsible for all the mess. Divide and rule. Get all these people fighting with each other and blaming each other for all the problems. That's how I see it. Anyway, shout out to everybody. Catch you guys on the live stream later on my live stream channel. Make sure you subscribe. Links in the description. I'm out.